The Royal Air Force, a tradition of excellence spanning over 75 years, throughout this time being on a moment's notice to defend our nation and our interests overseas. The Phantom, a symbol of that excellence, almost 25 years of dedicated service. It's hard to believe that it had been in service for about 1/3 of the RAF's life. The Phantom was introduced into Royal Air Force service in 1968, and at the time it was the best aircraft in the world in each of its 5 roles: air defense, nuclear strike, close air support, interdiction and reconnaissance. It remained the master of all trades until the mid-1970s, when it became purely an air defense fighter. It was this role to which the aircraft was best suited: supersonic, heavily armed and all-weather look-down, shoot-down capable. Although it proved to be the most successful fast jet in RAF history, the acquisition of the Phantom for the RAF was due to a twist of fate. The TSR-2, a British designed and built aircraft, had been selected in the early 1960s as a replacement for the Hunter, Canberra, and to supplement the strike capability of the V-Force. It turned out to be one of the last all-British military aircraft. It was to be a world leader in its field of operations, capable of continued supersonic flight at low level, employing terrain-following radar and having the ability to attack ground targets in all weathers by day or night. In the reconnaissance role, it would have been able to transmit real-time imagery to ground units. These capabilities were duplicated in the Tornado GR-1 some 20 years later. However, it was not to be. The Labour government elected in 1964 had stated that the British aircraft industry was grossly undesirable and that it was far preferable to buy cheap planes from the USA. Due to these policies, the TSR-2 project had been under threat of cancellation for some considerable time, with the industry's workforce unsure of their future.
Pressures are being brought upon the government with regard to these projects. Might this be the reason for delays in announcing a decision?
No, I don't think so for a moment. No, I think the government wants to consider these matters carefully, and it will come out in due course in a reasonable time with a statement of policy.
2 months later, the project was cancelled, and the British aircraft industry entered a state of rapid decline. The jigs and production machinery for the aircraft were destroyed, thus denying any possible resurrection of the project. All that remains today are 2 museum pieces, one at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford and the other at the Cosford Aerospace Museum. The Soviet war machine, however, continued growing, and the requirement for a new aircraft remained. The only real alternatives came from across the Atlantic. One of these, the TFX, latterly known as the F-111, was a 2-seat all-weather ground attack aircraft. Made by General Dynamics, it had capabilities approaching that of the TSR-2 and was coming into service with the United States Air Force in large numbers. Although only half the unit cost of the TSR-2, this aircraft was rejected. The alternative was the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom. The Royal Navy had already ordered a number of these aircraft, and it very quickly became the favoured option. It was cheaper than the F-111, also truly multi-role. And certain modifications would also provide valuable jobs for British industry. So the decision was made, and in 1968 the Phantom FGR-2 entered Royal Air Force service.
When the Phantom enters service later this year, it will be the first frontline aircraft the RAF have had new in something like 10 years. The RAF are delighted because the Phantom is far and away the most powerful aircraft they've ever had. It's also by far and away the most expensive. One way and another, over the next 10 years, each of these Phantoms is going to cost something like £2.5 million in dollars. But the RAF reckon they've got a bargain. The RAF Phantom is virtually identical to the Navy one. It even has folding wings. About 40% of each Phantom is British, including the 2 Rolls-Royce Spey engines. The Phantom can carry up to 5 tons of weapons, including Sparrow air-to-air guided missiles, 180 rounds of armor-piercing rockets, and the Sidewinder air-to-air infrared missile. The RAF are initially to have well over 100 Phantoms. And they will eventually get the naval ones as well when the carriers are phased out. At today's display was the CNC of Air Support Command, Sir Louis Hodges. The pilots all seem tremendously enthusiastic about the Phantom. Have you ever flown in her?
Yes, I've had one trip. I must say it is the most exhilarating aeroplane to fly, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Now, she's quite the most expensive aircraft I think that the RAF has ever purchased. Is it worth the money, do you think?
Well, one's got to remember that we have here built into a single aeroplane a capability to carry out ground attack, reconnaissance and air defense tasks. Now this is a tremendous advance on anything we've had before, and in my view it is very well worth it.
Now she is an enormously heavy aircraft, about 26 tons all up weight. Does this limit her manoeuvrability?
Not at all, no. She's extremely manoeuvrable, and pilots all speak very highly indeed of the way the Phantom flies.
So that in a dogfight she would be some use?
Oh, very good, very good.
And when she's intercepting, climbing fast to 40,000 feet, is she as good as the Lightning?
The Phantom is, I would say, it's as good as the Lightning, yes.
Already the Americans have built some 3,000 Phantoms. Among airmen, the Phantom has become something of a legend in her own lifetime. The plane that can do anything, go anywhere. Outfight and outfly virtually every other aircraft in the skies. For most of the 70s, she's going to be the heaviest weapon in the RAF's armory. As one pilot said to me, if we had to buy American, I'm glad we bought this one.
Royal Air Force Coningsby, today still one of the RAF's busiest airfields, operating 6 types of aircraft on a daily basis. It also attracts many other NATO frontline fighters using the North Sea ACMI facility. The prime task of the station is air defence of the southern sector of the UK, using the successor to the Phantom, the Tornado F-4. The station is home to 2 frontline squadrons and the Operational Conversion Unit. XT-891, the first Phantom to enter RAF service and the guardian of our skies for 23 years, now keeps watch on the main gate. She spent most of her life flying from Coningsby on 2280CU, and it's fitting that she should see her days out watching over the station. She stands loaded with inert weapons as a reminder to visitors of years gone by. 4 Skyflash, 4 Sidewinders and a centerline gun, the standard air defense warfit for the Phantom. But she remembers the days when the weapons were for real. The primary weapon was the Skyflash, a medium-range radar-guided air-to-air missile developed from the American Sparrow by British Aerospace. This potent weapon was carried semi-recessed under the fuselage and gave the Phantom a true beyond visual range look-down, shoot-down capability. Day or night, the F-4 had the potential to destroy 4 other aircraft without ever having seen them. For visual combat, she also carried 4 Sidewinder heat-seeking missiles. Combat-proven in Vietnam and all aerial conflicts since, the Sidewinder remains to this day the world's most successful short-range air-to-air missile. Mounted on inboard pylons, the Sidewinder had an unobscured forward view. Once the target had been acquired and the launch parameters met, it was a fire-and-forget system. Although not originally designed into the aircraft, during the Vietnam War it was realized that there was still a requirement during air-to-air combat for a gun. Subsequently, a gun pod was developed and fitted to the centerline station. The SUU-23 was a 6-barreled 20mm Vulcan Gatling gun, capable of firing at a rate of 100 rounds per second, 1,234 rounds of high explosive that would spoil anyone's day. The deterrent value of the Phantom and the best weapons available, thankfully, had the desired effect. No RAF Phantom ever fired her weapons in anger. After a flying career covering nearly 5,000 flying hours, XT-891 has been sentenced to a permanent ground tour as a result of the options for change policy. Although the guarding job is done with a great sense of pride, we all know that her best days were spent elsewhere.